All right, so that is our cue to start, inshallah. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Welcome and good evening, everyone. This is my name, Maryam Abid. I am the project coordinator at Nisa Helpline, and I will be your host for today, inshallah. And thank you for joining us for our 8th workshop. Yes, this is our 8th workshop in collaboration with the Let's Talk. And you are joining Understanding Addictions. Now, through our partnership with the Let's Talk, we are hosting a series of workshops called Her Wellness Journey. You can actually find the recordings of all of the previous ones on our website, all the self-help guides on our website as well. So this is a continuation of this series. The purpose of these workshops is to improve Muslim women's well-being and their access to social support and build their self-esteem. Now, before we get started, just a few housekeeping rules so that inshallah our workshops run smoothly. Now, for you attendees, please ensure that your mic is off. We do want to ensure that the session is uninterrupted, inshallah. If you have any questions at all, you can use the Q&A window. You should see the Q&A icon, right? So click on that to submit your questions. You can submit questions anonymously, right? So we will either reply back to you or we will just type in the answer if it's a logistical question. And for those of you guys joining us on Facebook live stream, welcome. Please share your questions in the comment section and they will be taken care of by our team, inshallah. And lastly, we will be sharing some polling questions throughout the presentation to keep you guys engaged and help you guys help us understand you and your needs and your preferences for future workshops, inshallah. Okay. Now, without further ado, this time is a little bit different because we are being joined by two honored guests, Sister Kinzanoor Danish and Brother Shakeel Khan. And Sister Kinza will be our first speaker, inshallah, and she is a registered psychotherapist. She has over 6 years of experience working as an addiction counselor in the community and hospital mental health and addiction settings. She has extensive training experience in supporting individuals and their families with substance abuse and behavioral addictions, including problem gambling, pornography, video gaming, technology, overuse, and overspending. Kinza has a bachelor's in psychology, a master's in art of counseling psychology, and a graduate certificate in addictions and mental health. Brother Shakeel Khan is our second speaker for today, and he is the founder of the SIRAAT Initiative. He is a counselor and educator renowned for his expertise in the mental health field and addictions. He has over a decade of experience and a wealth of life of knowledge. Shakeel has dedicated his career to supporting individuals struggling with addictions, guiding them towards a bright and fulfilling future. Furthermore, Shakeel's Islamic knowledge continues to evolve, serving as an influential cornerstone in his efforts to assist the Muslim community. By successfully integrating his spiritual wisdom with his professional expertise, Shakeel aims to foster a holistic approach to recovery, catering to the unique needs of individuals within the Muslim community. Now, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Sister Kinzanoor Danish. Assalamu alaikum, Kinza. How are you doing this evening?
Welcome, Salam. Good, alhamdulillah. Just at the end of my day here. I'm in Toronto, so I know everybody's from different areas.
Yes, I mean, I'm on from Toronto to 7 p.m. for me as well. But yeah, it's kind of the start of my day because of midterm season. But yeah, thank you so much, Kinza, for joining us. And before we begin, we are going to start with a few short questions, inshallah. You will see those pop up on your screen. Please take a few seconds to answer the polls. All right. There you go. You should see the first question. It's about where you guys are joining us. I'm assuming most of us are from Canada. Yes. Wow, we do have someone from outside of Canada. That's nice. All right, so I guess I'll jump to the second poll question. Once again, just to know you guys a bit better, you guys don't have any obligation to do these questions, by the way, so feel free to disclose it or not, if, whatever you guys feel comfortable. Okay, thank you for this question as well. We'll move forward, inshallah. Okay, so thank you so much for your participation on these poll questions. Now, Kinza, the stage is yours.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm just gonna share screen here. Or I start. Okay. Brother Shakeel, you can see that, right? Yeah, okay. You're the only one I can see right now. Okay, so I'll be kicking us off with a brief introduction around what addiction is, and maybe breaking it down a little bit more on how it develops and how you can support a loved one with an addiction. And then Brother Shakeel will jump into more information around understanding addictions as well and explaining it from a different lens. So what is an addiction? Typically, when we talk about addictions, oftentimes people think about a very much biological sort of chemical hook inside of a substance that oftentimes leads someone to develop an addiction. However, the definition of what an addiction is a little bit more nuanced. And as research has progressed in the last 20, 30 years, it's actually, we've found that there's more nuance to the, the description or the definition of an addiction. So this definition is taken from Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a researcher out of, I believe he's in BC. And yeah, he's there in BC, in Vancouver. And so he describes addiction in sort of like his definition of addiction. I broke it down into 3 components. So the first part is that it's a behavior that provides temporary relief or pleasure. So it's, any kind of substance use or any kind of problem behavior that provides an individual with some kind of relief from any stress that they're experiencing in their life, or any kind of challenges that they're going through, that they're just trying to not think about or escape, or emotions, difficult emotions that they're trying to not feel. So they're having this temporary relief from all of that, and they're also experiencing pleasure at the same time while also having the relief. So that's the first part. Then the second part is there are negative consequences associated with that behavior. So there are some negative consequences associated to that person's substance use or their problem behaviors, like conflict in the family, work-related stress, school-related stress, not being able to meet various responsibilities, whatever the consequences. It could be health-related consequences as well. And then the third part is, despite all of these consequences, they're still having a hard time stopping their negative behavior, or their substance use or their problem behavior. So this is sort of the definition of an addiction. So there has to be the pleasure aspect of it and some kind of relief. There are some negative consequences, and there's still difficulty stopping despite those negative consequences. And I like this definition because it doesn't say that there's a specific, amount of substance, or, like a specific, level of, like substance use or involvement in an addiction that defines it as an addiction. It more so focuses on the consequences of a person's addiction in their life. And that sort of determines whether or not it's an addiction, because someone can, we live in, countries where substances like alcohol and cannabis are legalized. And so oftentimes, most people are able to engage in using these substances without any kind of negative consequences or serious negative consequences in their life. So it helps to look at addiction in this way, to really focus on what kind of negative consequences is it having in one's life, and especially as Muslims, oftentimes our consequences can look different compared to the general public. So it's being mindful of this piece when we're looking at addiction. So one piece that I didn't mention is, I want to mention is, I did call it a behavior here. And the reason for that is because it's more than substance use. Addiction is more than substance use. There's many different types of addictions that people can develop. As Miriam had mentioned in my introduction, I do work with many different types of addictions, video game, problem gambling, pornography, hypersexuality, shopping or overspending, technology overuse. Sometimes eating can also be an addiction as well, and that needs to be explored a little bit more for it to be labeled as an addiction and not an eating disorder. So it is more than substance use. And what's really important, and the reason I'm mentioning that here, is because it's important to recognize that no one type of addiction is worse than another. Sometimes we tend to look at all the behavioral addictions as maybe less intense or less worse than, something related to substance use. And the reality is that all of these behaviors are pleasurable and they impact the same part of our brain as substances, right? So the process of how an addiction develops is pretty similar when it comes to the brain. And so we do want to recognize that no one is worse than another. It really just is about the consequences that it has on your life. So that's a key piece to keep in mind. So I think there's a poll question here, Miriam, if you can post that one.
Yep, sure, inshallah. Give me a second to... I hope everyone is ready to participate on the poll question. All right. The question is, why do people develop addictions?
Yes. Why do people develop addictions? There's a few options. You can also scroll because there's one at the bottom.
Seems like people are thinking.
Yeah.
Taking a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's good.
Yeah.
Or to get an idea of what everyone thinks.
Yeah. I don't know what the time, were we giving a minute?
It's a minute now, so we should.
Okay. All right, we'll stop at the minute. So yeah, we've had a few answers. So the popular answer seems to be changes in the brain, trauma, and then there's one that's no willpower. That's the one I think I hear a lot from 12-step programs, right? No willpower. So sorry, I'm trying to just close this. The poll. So changes in the brain and trauma are close, right? They are one of the few things or the many things that can contribute to the development of an addiction. And the model that we use most often when we talk about addiction is called the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And so this is a model that's used not just for addictions, but also for problem, problems with someone's health, like any kind of health related issues, physical health concerns. It's used for mental health concerns and understanding how any of those concerns have developed over a period of time. So we look at biological, psychological, social, and spiritual factors that have contributed to the development of someone's addiction. It's not just one thing, it's a combination of these factors. And everyone's theory of addiction will look different, meaning how someone developed an addiction will look different person to person based on their experiences, their biological makeup, and what's happening in their life, just kind of stressors that they experience in their life. So when we talk about biological, I think all of our minds kind of go to genetics as well. There's a lot of research that shows that there are patterns within families where you can see generational transmission of addiction. Like there's family members who've had addictions, and then they're down the line, there's other family members who've developed addictions. So there is a genetic vulnerability that people can inherit to develop an addiction. I use the term vulnerability. Just because you have the genetic makeup does not mean that you are guaranteed to develop an addiction. You might be at a higher risk, but that also your genetics interacts with your environment and your experiences to lead you to develop an addiction. So usually that's not the sole reason why someone can develop an addiction. The withdrawal symptoms someone experiences. So when you start engaging in substance use or problem behavior, you do, and then you stop engaging in those behaviors, you experience withdrawal symptoms, and they look different for each type of substance or behavior. So to avoid withdrawal symptoms, people can oftentimes continue engaging in their addiction to avoid the withdrawal symptoms. Developing tolerance over time. So your body will oftentimes adapt to a certain amount of a substance or a problem behavior. And then so you start taking risks, you start increasing the amount so that you can experience the same pleasure in engaging in that behavior. Usually, people who experience these challenges with sleep can oftentimes, develop an addiction, have a higher likelihood of developing an addiction, maybe to fall asleep, or if they're awake, they're engaging in their problem behavior or substance use. Even experiencing cravings, like the physical experience of cravings, can oftentimes, increase the desire to engage in your addiction. Physical health concerns such as chronic pain, and then changes that are happening in the brain. So there are many changes that occur in the brain as you start to develop an addiction. So these are to do with pathways in our brain that are associated with pleasure. And I think Brother Shakeel will also talk about this a little bit as well. So I'll move past that. Then we go into psychological pieces. So psychologically, when we talk about this domain, we're looking at diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health concerns. Commonly anxiety or depression that's undiagnosed can lead a higher likelihood that someone might develop an addiction to maybe cope with the symptoms of their anxiety and depression. Oftentimes seeking an escape, right? Trying to just avoid experiencing uncomfortable thoughts, uncomfortable emotions. That experience of having pleasure, or even just that relief that you experience, that's a psychological reward that we're experiencing, and that makes us that ensures that we repeat that behavior. And our brain likes to remember things that we enjoy, right? Our brain is really great at that. Chronic stress, right? When you repeatedly experience stress, engaging in substance use or problem behaviors can be a way of coping with that. Trauma experiences. So this is one that was in the poll question as well. So oftentimes when people experience trauma and they're having, post-traumatic symptoms, they can oftentimes rely on their substance use or their problem behavior as a way of coping or escaping from those thoughts, of numbing themselves in the process. Irrational or unhealthy thoughts around the substance use or the problem behavior can oftentimes lead someone to develop an addiction. An example of this can be unrealistic beliefs around gambling, right? Like people who, continuously go back to gambling as a way to win back losses, or whatever that is for them, can oftentimes keep them playing. And just challenges with regulating emotions. If anybody notices that they go from 0 to 100 with a certain emotion very fast, oftentimes substance use or problem behaviors are ways that people try to manage or cope with that. And so we want to recognize what factors are contributing biologically and psychologically. Other ones are social, which is family and peer societal attitudes around substance use or problem behaviors. Socially, if someone's okay with it, if it's accepted in society, you're more likely to try it out. If your peers are using it at an earlier age, being able to access it at an earlier age and use substances or problem behavior at an earlier age increases the likelihood of developing an addiction later on in life. Oftentimes, any kind of challenges being experienced in your life, right? So education, job, issues with social class related to your social class, poverty, inequality, minimal access to resources, social injustices that are being experienced, and stressors. All of those contribute to the development of an addiction. Another one that's here is marital problems and family breakdown as well, right? Especially when they've happened in key developmental stages in our life, that increases our likelihood that we might develop an addiction down the road. The last one here is spiritual. So this one's lack of sense of purpose in life, right? Lack of direction, purpose, maybe not feeling connected, and just feeling really isolated. And this can be from community, this can be from God, this can be from, just your own personal values as well. There might be chronic feelings of guilt and shame because of that as well. And this is more specifically religious and spiritual guilt and shame that can oftentimes be very uncomfortable for people. And addiction is a way to escape that and not feel it at all. And being distanced from religious and spiritual practices, right? So when you're not regularly engaged in your spiritual practices, you have a lot of time to engage in these behaviors, or maybe distance from your values when you're not regularly practicing those pieces. So these are some, this is again, not a comprehensive list. These are some factors in all of these 4 domains. And it's important to recognize that a combination of these factors come together to create an addiction. And it's not one thing that leads someone to develop an addiction. So it's important when we talk about recovery for someone to recognize what are the factors that are contributing to an addiction in their own life. Miriam, I think there's one more poll question here.
Yep, I'll pull that out. Okay, great. The poll question is, have you tried to support your loved one with an addiction? And if you guys can participate, inshallah, put in your thoughts.
All right, we're getting a few in. I think we can. Do we want to go to the minute?
Yeah, that's good, I think.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we got a good participation.
Yes, almost everyone did.
Yeah, it's awesome. So most people have said they've directed their loved ones to a professional support. When you've noticed a loved one struggling with an addiction, and some people don't know someone personally being impacted by an addiction, and that's fine. And the reason for this poll question was because one of the things I often touch upon when I do addictions work is working with loved ones, family members and friends of people who have addictions. Oftentimes, whenever a loved one has tried to support someone with an addiction who's in their life, it's always from good faith. It always comes from a place of care and love for that person. However, most of the times there's tension in the relationship over a period of time. Maybe your loved one has pushed you away. Maybe they've said they don't want the support. And so I'm just going to briefly go over some points around how you can support your loved one who has an addiction. So we want to firstly not fall into the trap of trying to control their addiction. So what this means is we're not trying to stop them from engaging in the addiction. So oftentimes what we think we need to do is completely, like lock them up, prevent all kind of contact, take away all their resources, and just monitor them very closely. And this just brings more tension to the relationship, because maybe your loved one doesn't want that. Maybe that's not what they need. That's not the kind of support they need from you at the time, and they're not ready for that kind of support. So the best way is to actually ask your loved one how you can support them in their recovery. You can even think about ways in which their addiction is being maintained in their life right now. What is keeping them actively in their addiction? You can even take this biopsychosocial model to them. So this model, and also this part, and more advice on how to support your loved one, is part in the handout, the resource guide as well, that will be released after this webinar. So oftentimes, bringing this material and having this discussion can be helpful as well in exploring and being curious, and really letting the person with the addiction take the wheel when it comes to where they want to go, what direction they want to go in terms of their recovery. And if they're not going in the direction that you think they should go in, that means they're not ready for that. And so sometimes we do have to recognize when control is more for us than it is for the other person, for their well-being. We have to recognize that. We do encourage you to set boundaries, communicate and set your boundaries in an assertive communication style. I break down a little bit more in the resource guide how to communicate assertively using I statements. So you can get a little bit more information about that there, but setting boundaries can be a new thing for a lot of us, especially when we come from backgrounds and cultures where typically we haven't had examples of it, or it's been looked at negatively. And so boundaries can be really, really helpful when it comes to addictions, because oftentimes people may very quickly slip into enabling behaviors. Loved ones can oftentimes start to enable the addiction by protecting the person with the addiction from experiencing any kind of negative consequences. So one of the things we want to focus on when we set our boundaries is focusing on specific behaviors that are happening due to an addiction. For example, a loved one is, falling short in their responsibilities in the home. And when they're falling short consistently, what is the consequence of that? Address that specific behavior of that specific responsibility, the responsibility they're falling short on. When we just talk about the addiction and the person's not ready to talk about the addiction, we scare them away. So we start by first focusing on all the other stuff that's happening, because that's clearly happening because of the addiction, but they're not ready to talk about it. So think about how has their addiction impacted their relationship with you, right? What specifically has been happening that has been negative? And then the other thing that a lot of people have done is offer your loved ones resources for how they can, that they can connect with to seek their own support. So I'm going to go over those resources very quickly so I don't eat in too much into Brother Shakeel's time. So I've actually provided some examples of these resources in the resource guide as well. But these are the basic different types of resources for addiction that are available in Canada. I specifically work in Ontario, so I know a little bit more about Ontario, but I'm sure it is sort of general all over. So withdrawal management or detox centers. So this is where someone goes temporarily for a short period of time. So they will stay there for a short period of time while they're withdrawing from their substance or problem behavior. So they go through however long the withdrawal goes on for, that's how long they're going to be at the withdrawal management facility. So that's what these centers are for. Outpatient addiction counseling. So this can be group or individual. So this is addiction counseling that you receive in the community or privately. And you sort of, you work through that biopsychosocial model. You address all the underlying problems that are causing the addiction in the outpatient counseling. And this can be a set number of sessions, or it can be a number of sessions, unlimited number of sessions. There's a lot of group counseling options as well, where different types of treatment groups are available for people to address their concerns. Mindfulness-based relapse prevention is a great one as well, if someone's looking to use those skills. Inpatient addiction treatment, or rehab, is what it's commonly known as. So inpatient addiction treatment is where we see in the movies, right? Where people go in and they stay there for months or for a few weeks, and then they come out and they're cured. So inpatient treatment, addiction treatment, is also something that's available more. I know more about Ontario. I can speak more for Ontario. It is available in Ontario, and there are beds that are covered under OHIP. So most centers will also have a few beds that are covered through the provincial healthcare. However, there are wait lists, and it's important to be mindful of that as well. So this is where someone goes and they stay for an extended period of time, and they're receiving treatment. They're getting the individual and the group counseling while they're living somewhere. And the environment there is typically a more structured environment. Addiction medicine. So this is a really cool thing that's been rolling out a little bit more in Ontario. So addiction medicine is using medication to support you. So what medication can do is it can prevent you from experiencing withdrawal symptoms when you're withdrawing off of substances. There's certain medications that can also reduce cravings for substances. For instance, for alcohol, there's medication called naltrexone or Camprol that doctors can prescribe. So if you want, you can explore this with your family doctors. There's also just specific addiction medicine clinics throughout Ontario. I'm not sure around the other provinces, but I know in Ontario they're more prevalent. Peer support. So this is, again, anybody else who has a lived experience with an addiction, getting support from them, as opposed to maybe an addictions counselor, and just getting that, mutual understanding of, they know what it feels like. Typically, people who provide peer support have been abstinent for at least 2 years, and they've been working on their recovery for a while. 12-step groups. These are what we hear about often as well in common, narratives or and talks around addiction. So 12-step is, groups like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous. There's one for every type of substance, or even every type of problem behavior as well. So 12-step groups follow a different kind of approach. They have their own sort of way of looking at addiction. They go off of a book that they have. It is also peer run. So again, other people who have had addictions and have gone through the 12-step program will provide support to people who are new to the program. So it's experienced people providing support to people who are new to making changes to their addictions, and they use their 12-step program that they've created. Harm reduction support. So harm reduction is when someone isn't ready to stop their substance use or problem gambling. Harm reduction is often focused on, how do I reduce the harm that this addiction is doing in my life? Maybe I'm not in a place to stop it, but how do I reduce the harms? So there's many different ways that can be explored. But if someone's not ready for those support for completely stopping their substance use or problem behavior, they can then maybe look into the harm reduction. How do I just reduce the negative impacts or consequences it's having in my life? And then there's also support for family and friends. Most places that provide outpatient addiction counseling also have the option for family and friends support. And what this looks like is group counseling options, your own opportunities to learn about addiction, and just really talk to other family members and other people who are going through what you're going through, and just feel that sense of connection and community. So these are the different types of supports that are out there. And so when you're Googling or trying to find something near you, maybe this can help provide some language as well of what to look for when you're looking at those, when you're putting those Google searches in. And I hope I haven't taken too much of the Brother Shakeel's time, but this is my contact information. So you can find me on Psychology Today. I also have a booking site. The best way to reach me is through my email address, which is my first name, period, my last name @gmail.com. If you have more information, if you have more questions, or you want to know more, if you're hoping to be directed to somewhere, you can reach out to me. I know a lot of resources in Ontario that can help support you in connecting with. All right, that's all for me.
Okay, thank you so much, Sister Kinza, for your presentation. I'm a psychology student, so I also benefited from it. So inshallah, if I got a question on it, I should be good. So yeah, thank you so much, Sister Kinza. Now we will go on with Brother Shakeel. Brother Shakeel, if you're ready, you can take the stage, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay. First and foremost, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. May the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala find you in good health. May He alleviate us from any form of stress, and may we follow unto the sunnah of our beloved messenger, Muhammad ibn Abdullah, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, until the end of time. Okay, so I got some time. So the way, right before we even get into this, the way that I explain addictions is I really want people to understand addictions, the complexities behind it, how it affects people, how it's the inception of addictions by itself, but most importantly, trying to break the stigma of addictions. Because if I were to ask you right now to close your eyes and say, what does a person suffering from addictions look like? You're going to paint the generic picture that we all know. So inshallah, throughout this entire talk, I'm really just going to try to normalize this conversation so that we can understand it better. Because in the great words of Dr. Gabor Mate, he said that the opposite of addiction is connection. So this entire talk is all about just connecting the mind to those who need it the most. Bismillah. So while we get in, there's my screen is just in the way there. I might just minimize that. Okay. Surprising little statistics here is that the school surveys in Canada have reported that up to 60% of students in grades 7 to 9 reported lifetime use of various substances. In Ontario, Canada, 75% youth in grade 12 reported lifetime alcohol use, and 26% for cannabis and 26% for nicotine. And with the rising of vapes and all that kind of stuff, it's just going up, subhanAllah. So roughly 400 Muslim Canadians, more than 20% of the country's 1.8 million person Muslim population, are at risk for addictions related mental health. And an estimated 21% of Canadians, about 6 million roughly, will meet the criteria for addictions in their lifetime. This is including process addictions and chemical substance. So addiction defined through another I love Dr. Gabor Mate's talk about addiction. So this one I got from somewhere else, which is an addiction is a chronic dysfunction of the brain system that involves rewards, motivation, and memory. It's about the way your body craves a substance or a behavior, especially if it causes a compulsive or obsessive pursuit of reward and the lack of concern over consequences. So, Sister Miriam, if we can get the first question up for the poll, that would be awesome.
All right, on it. We should
Thank
see
you.
the
Can I see this one?
question now.
Yes.
Have you ever been attached to something or someone before? That's an interesting question.
Perfect. Have you ever been attached to something or someone before? Or in other words, have you ever been in love? I hope people are saying yes. If not, then we got to talk.
Yes, we have had 100% answers saying yes.
Mashallah, mashallah. So it's interesting. The reason why I like asking this question, I got 32 seconds, so I'll just let people keep on asking. Are we good?
We should be good to move on. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, beautiful. So the reason why I like asking this question is because when we think of addictions, we think of like, oh, it's just a substance we shoot into our veins and our bodies crave it. Well, there's an emotional component to it as well, which is where, for example, like I just recently had my first son, Malik. So he's turning 2 in this December, inshallah. And every day I think about him. When I'm at work, I think about him. When I'm at the gym, I think about it. And it's because I'm so in love with my son that I always want to know, what's Abu's best friend doing? So because I'm so invested and we have that connection, his little babiness is taking up my time. So when we look at love as well, or connection, or people that we are attached to, we can actually correlate it to people in addictions. Although we can call this love toxic, or we can call this love not healthy, or even dysfunctional for that matter, it still takes up our time. So people who are suffering from addictions, their primary goal is to ask themselves, how am I going to get high next? Where am I going to get my next fix? SubhanAllah. So to understand addictions on a better term is to understand this thing called the substance use continuum. So the substance use continuum is something that I like to use in my own clinical practice, which is kind of understanding, how addictions develops over time, right? So I like to look at addictions as a continuum, as a progressive climb, kind of like you're climbing a mountain. So we have here the no use. The person here is they never use, completely abstinent, right? SubhanAllah, haram, yada, yada, right? And then we have this thing called beneficial use, which is, oh, I just got my wisdom tooth pulled out. Give me some T3s, right? So there's a use under medical supervision. So the doctor will prescribe it. Then we have this thing here called non-problematic, which is the use without any physical or mental health impacts, meaning that, we're going to parties and we're drinking alcohol, rolling up a joint, passing the vape around, all that kind of stuff, right? So there's really no, it's called, well, I would say that it is a little bit problematic, but there's no physical impacts to it as well. Then we have the problematic use, which is now it's developing a pattern, right? Every Friday you're going to the club and getting drunk, or every Saturday you're bringing your friends over and you're rolling up a joint. Then we jump into the next one, which is called potentially harmful, which is episodic use that can and may be leading to harmful impacts, which is like constant alcohol use, constant uses of maybe like stimulant drugs like crystal meth or cocaine, and how that is slowly deteriorating your body. And then subhanAllah, the last one, which is the substance use disorder, which is, I like to call it the loss of control. You have now allowed the drugs has now fully embedded itself into your mind, body, and spirit. So speaking of mind, body, and spirit, let's jump into the addictions in the brain. So the addictions in the brain equal chaos, as you can see here, the little picture that we found. So addiction impacts the brain on many levels. When someone develops an addiction, the brain craves the reward of the substance. Pause. An example here is, imagine eating an amazing slice of pizza, and then you're just like, hey, I'm having a craving. I want to have that slice of pizza again. Right? So you're constantly thinking of the food and the euphoric feeling and how your brain is craving and how your body is craving it. So this is due to the intense stimulation of the brain reward system. In response, many users continue use of the substance. This can lead to a host of euphoric feelings and strange behavioral traits. Euphoric feelings basically meaning like super happy feelings, feeling like you can rule the world. For some people, I love going to the gym. A lot of my clients, they love working out as well. So they'll tell me that like, it's so amazing just getting like that pump in, right? They feel like they can take over the entire world after they've hit their PR, right? Their personal record. So it's like that euphoric feeling times a million. So the long-term addiction can have severe outcomes such as brain damage and even results in death. And subhanAllah, something that I was reading earlier in regards to the statistics. So I'm from British Columbia, and our opioid epidemic is out of control, where I believe that we are now over 1,000 overdoses just in 2023, and we're projected to go even higher. So addictions itself deteriorates the brain slowly, or depending on how much you use, and then also the body, the heart, the lungs, the respiratory system, muscles, everything. People don't see the change right away. So addictions, the way that I like to explain it, especially substance use addictions, it is a slow burn. Although it is a slow burn, it is still burning. Then we have, so it continues on here, is that once the chemical has affected the brain, individuals can feel physical symptoms as well as the impact of the chemical throughout their nervous system. Symptoms can include a rapid heartbeat, paranoia, and for people that use drugs like cocaine, crystal meth, or any form of amphetamines, paranoia is a very big symptom. Nausea, hallucinations, and other disturbing sensations the individual has little control over, which can induce psychosis and or other mental health disorders, which is very interesting. Moving forward, what we have here is now called addiction plus the body equals loss. Loss of what? I'll explain. When you abuse drugs, you run the risk of respiratory depression, heart attack, coma, overdose, stroke, hypothermia, dehydration, blood disorders, gastric problems, panic attacks, and cognitive deficits. So in other words, everyone, my beloved listeners, is that addictions grasps the body and puts the body into a full cardiac chokehold. The list goes on. Drug use can make you look and feel weak, malnourished, and can destroy your immune system over time. Studies show that individuals who do not seek treatment for their drug problems only have a life expectancy of 15 to 20 years after the onset of their addictions. So in other words, if you want to speed the clock to death, and forgive me for my French here, I don't mean to be blunt, but just to get my point across here, if you want to speed the clock of death, addictions is one of the ways that we can get to that. Considering all the biological dysfunctions, the psychological dysfunctions, and the emotional dysfunctions as well as disorders. So subhanAllah, working in the industry for roughly 10 years, a little over 10 years, and with my lifetime experience, I've noticed that stimulant drugs or downers or uppers, people are not really surviving, especially with the fentanyl crisis as well. It is very dangerous to be using drugs at this moment, and all moments, by the way. So the long-term drug use effect. So long-term drug use affects the brain functioning, causing memory loss, difficulty learning, impaired judgment, and other cognitive deficits. Certain drugs have more severe brain effects. For example, alcohol puts users at risk for dementia. Inhalants damage brain cells faster than other substances, and marijuana causes short-term memory problems and decreased IQ over time and heightens the chances of developing schizophrenia. And lastly, death. Being a teacher and specifically for an addictions program, oftentimes I talk to my students about the dangers of marijuana. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about the social use of it as well. We have this whole fad where it's like, it's okay to smoke weed, it calms you down. But, externally, yeah, we're talking about calming down, but, at the end of the day, internally too, it's playing a whole different ball game as well, I guess you can say. So moving forward, the addiction serves as a purpose. It temporarily relieves or gives you pleasure that otherwise isn't available to you. The addiction is never the primary problem. The addiction is an attempt on the individual's part to solve the problem. So when I'm sitting with my clients, and this is something that Dr. Gabor Mate talks about, my ustad, I guess you can say, is that when I'm sitting with my clients, subhanAllah, it's not that I obviously wonder what kind of drugs you're using, but in my counseling practice, it's more of, I understand that you're using heroin. I understand that you're using alcohol. Habibi, I understand that you're using marijuana, right? But what I want to understand is that what made you believe that the answer was in this bottle? Or in other words, what made you believe that you can solve your problems in this bottle? What aid is this bottle giving you? Oh, it's making you feel better? Okay, let's talk about when you feel sad. How are you feeling? What is life like when you're looking sad? And how does addictions, or how does your substance or your compulsive behaviors play a role into this problem? So one of the things I love to talk about, and I'm going to try to really, I know that we're really close on time here, so I don't want to take too much time, but I love Abraham Maslow. Oh, one of the best, amazing guys you can ever read about. But Mr. Abraham Maslow, and for the psychology students, this is like first year psychology here, is that Abraham Maslow talks about the basic needs of human life, right? All the way up to self-actualization. So a lot of my clients, parents specifically, will come to me and say, oh, Brother Shakeel, how do I get my kids out of addiction? What did I do wrong as a parent? Or what did the community do wrong? How, like, my kid prayed 5 times a day, and subhanAllah, now they're doing heroin on the downtown east side. What did I do wrong? And subhanAllah, that is such a loaded question to ask, and an even loaded question to answer, because and the sister before, you know, with the biopsychosocial model, there is a social component to the inception of addictions. And with Abraham Maslow's needs, we're going to kind of break down the inception of this, or the beginning of this. So basic need first is the physiological needs, right? Every human needs to eat. We need to sleep. We need water. You know, we need to kind of create a balance. I know if I don't sleep, wallah, I'm tired, right? I'm tired. I get agitated. I'm just yawning 24/7. Then as we get older, right, or as we, you know, progress in life, then we have this thing called safety, right, which is the security of body and of employment and of resources. So subhanAllah, living in Canada, you know, we have housing to the best of our ability. We have, you know, shelters, we have food, we have opportunity to be safe. And then we move on to love and belonging. And this is something that I want to hit home to the respected youth that are listening, and to our esteemed parents. One of the questions I want to ask you, so that you can ask yourself, and inshallah ask your children, is that as a parent, am I making you feel like you belong to this family? Because what happens here, if you read Dr. Gabor Mate's book on why parents should matter than peers, as children get older, specifically in their teenage years, they are more likely to want to seek the validation of their friends versus their parents. And this is a typical life of a teenager, right? But you must ask this question: is this house that I am providing my child, is this a house of peace? Is this a house of love? Is this a house of muhabba that the Prophet ﷺ talks about? Is this the bait, you know? So when we are raising our children, you know, and this is something that I really want to just explain here, which is, it's so hard to answer, well, what did I do wrong as a parent? Or what did my son do wrong? They're getting A, B's, and C's, and my daughter's X, Y, and Z's. But it's not a matter of what did you do wrong as a parent. It's the matter of, did you make your child feel like they belonged? Did you prioritize work over X, Y, and Z? Did you give your children time? You know, and one of my favorite surahs is Surah Asr, you know, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about he swears on time. Well, when we swear on time, we're swearing on affection, we're swearing on multiple things here. And love, when time is utilized properly, when time creates meaning, children belong to the family. And if children belong to the family, then the next one is esteem. And they have a good self-esteem. They have a good connection with their parents. They have a good connection with their peers. They have a good connection. They have a great connection with themselves and their higher power, which then moves into my next point, which is self-actualization. And subhanAllah, that is the best version of themselves. So moving forward, then we talk about this thing called trauma. Now, trauma, you know, working with clients, right, specifically my female clients, we see that trauma plays a very big role in actually the inception of addictions. So trauma is a perversive problem. It results from exposure to an incident of series of events that are emotionally disturbing or life-threatening, with lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical, social, emotional, and or spiritual well-being. So the way that I like to explain trauma is that trauma is like it's like a disruption, right? Trauma is like your body is like going on a good straight path, and then out of nowhere the road just starts cracking, right? And then as you're driving on the road, the car is slowly just braking, right? So it's affecting every part of the car. And if you ever notice, when people who are suffering from trauma, they really hold it in their body. It goes into their illnesses, it affects their mental health, it affects their physical health, and all that kind of stuff. Or even dietitians. I was at a seminar yesterday, and a dietitian was talking about how, your trauma can create, your unhealthy eating habits and so on and so forth. So understanding trauma. People often think trauma is what happens to you. Like, for example, a divorce, a car accident, neglect, parents' abuse, all that kind of stuff. No, actually, these are not the trauma, but instead the traumatic events. Trauma is not what happens to you. Trauma is what happens inside of you. As a result to these traumatic events, and what happens inside you is that you get disconnected from your mind, body, and spirit, which overall shapes the way that you think of the world, which is a negative worldview. A book that I'm currently reading right now is talking about, I think it's called Understanding Addictions, or What is Cravings? And it's by Dr. Karkala and Kelly, PhD. And they both talk about how cravings are an intense desire for using or consuming certain substances. Forgive me for the typo. With the goal of feeling pleasure and satisfaction. So cravings are one of many key components of addictions, right? People have the cravings to, eat ice cream, or they have the craving to, maybe go to the, go to the gym or whatever it is, right? There's like a biological craving for the substance, right? Another interesting thing here, and this is something that I kind of speak about in my classroom, is another interesting component of addiction is the lack of impulse control. It is crucial to develop this tool in childhood. So now it's not correct to say, oh, the reason why you're addicted is because you don't know how to control your impulses. Children, the moment that we are born, we have impulses, right? When a baby's hungry, they cry, right? So when we talk about impulse control, we're talking about how to basically cope and compose ourselves in a time of discomfort, how to control our impulses and have this beautiful thing called delayed gratification. Just basically saying, I know I can't have it right now, but when I get home, I can have it. So the 4 types of craving. We have the physical craving. For example, the body craves a cigarette due to not having it for an hour or more. Then we have this thing called a habitual craving, which is wanting to eat chocolate after dinner. So every time after dinner, we're just like, hey, it's dinner time's done. Here's your dessert. And you do it every day for the rest of your life. So it becomes like a habit, or we call it habit forming. Or, for example, we have this one called social craving. And I know we're almost done here, you guys, so please bear with me. We have social cravings, which is wanting to have a drink when I'm with my friends. So the thing here is that, like, every time I hang out with my friends, I guess you can say I get triggered. And because I get triggered, I immediately want to follow that trigger and play into the sensation. So I guess I can ask Sister Miriam here. Sister Miriam, can you pull up the next question?
Yep, a minute, inshallah, and it should be launched. There we go. Do you have triggers?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a, yes.
Yeah, it's a great question to ask, because when we do our, thank you so much. So that's, I think we got 7 out of 9 and 1 and 1. Awesome. So most of you said yes. So alhamdulillah. When I'm sitting with my clients, one of the questions I ask them is, what are your triggers? And now here's the thing. People think, and this is something that I really want to just kind of hit a home run with here, kind of give you like a Mike Tyson knockout on this one, is that when dealing with or supporting people in addictions, you must ask yourself 2 questions. And I hope that these 2 questions can help you if you are struggling with addictions, or if you're struggling with a loved one who is in addictions, which is, how can I help this person rehabilitate the mind? And how can I help this person reintegrate back into society? Because oftentimes what we find is that if you remove the drugs, the person is sober, but they still have problems. So we must rehabilitate. We must find therapy. We must find a sense of connection. Another thing that I realized, and this is with my personal loved ones who are suffering from addictions, is just because you are sober does not mean that it is appropriate for you to go back into the same jungle that you just got out of. Because if you do, and you're not prepared to deal with the monsters inside of this jungle, you will suffer from this thing called social cravings, which means this. Yeah, I know that I can hang out with, I know so-and-so drinks, but if I hang out with them for only an hour, it should be fine. Or if I just text them, it should be okay. Nothing too much. What you're doing here, my love, is that what you're trying to do is that you're rationalizing your social behaviors. But what you don't realize is that that hungry ghost is catching up with you. So when we are rehabilitating and we are reintegrating, we are basically I guess you can say in a tech term, is that we are doing a factory reset with you so that we can prepare you for when you go back into that jungle or when you speak with certain loved ones, right? And then the next one here is emotional craving, which is wanting to smoke marijuana to feel less anxious. And this is something that people always come to me. Brother Shakeel, I know marijuana is not, it's not addictive. I'm like, khalas, like we're not gonna have what's addictive, what's not. If this is something that you are constantly using to aid your anxiety, my friend, it is not that it is addictive, but it has now become a coping mechanism. And if you cannot live without it, then we have a problem. And you have a problem, right? So oftentimes when people are just like, oh, I just smoke once in a while when I'm feeling down. Well, how about instead of going towards marijuana or alcohol or X, Y, and Z, why don't we talk about your coping mechanism? Why don't we talk about your problems? And inshallah, we can find a remedy that is outside of just lighting something up. Islam teaches us to be compassionate and supportive to those who are struggling. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, show mercy to those on earth, and the one in the heavens will show mercy upon you. You know, as you know, when we see people in addictions, we see people who are suffering on the streets. A lot of people come to me, they say, Brother Shakeel, how could you even help these people when they made this choice themselves? How could you not help them? SubhanAllah, like, you know, these people, if you were to sit and hear their stories, you'd cry. A lot of these people who are on the streets, a lot of these people who are in recovery homes, a lot of these people who are just trying to get help, these are people who are victims of trauma. When we find compassion, when we find muhabba, when we find love, what happens here, this bridge is built, and that is the bridge of compassion and empathy. And how can we as Muslims not have this bridge when our beloved Nabi has established this bridge for us? You see, when it comes to addictions, everyone, I want you to understand this, and I'm going to wrap it up here, is that we cannot birth without bleeding. We cannot taste the sweetness of a coconut without cracking its shell. So how can we understand addictions without breaking the stigma? You understand what I'm trying to say here? To fully understand addictions, you must first get out of your own way, because the stigma is, there's a harmful effect of it. Feelings of shame and hopelessness and isolation, the reluctance to ask for help or to get treatment. Because in our community, in the Desi Pakistani community, in all communities that are minority groups, we tend to shame people. We tend to say, how could you do this to yourself? I gave you everything. Oh, just get over it. You're so weak. Bro, and forgive me for the slang here, but you know that when it comes to compulsive disorders and when it comes to chemical dependencies, it literally aches the body and it seeps all the way into your bones. People who actively, I know my clients, actively want, but Brother Shakeel, I want to get clean, but it hurts. Sobriety hurts, whether it is a feeling, whether it's an emotional pain or it is a physical pain. And I find aid in X, Y, and Z. right? So we must break the stigma, but we must break ourselves first so that we can help those, and we must create the bridge of muhabba and understanding. So my last piece of advice is this. For those who are suffering from addictions, you are not a bad person because you are of your addictions. You are still an amazing individual. And something that I like to say, because considering this is a Muslim webinar, one of my favorite surahs is from Surah Ad-Duha, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى مَا وَدَعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى. People in addictions tend to believe that there is no hope, there is no tomorrow, there is no nothing, because they're in a gloomy state of mind, in a gloomy belief of mind. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I swear by the morning, by its glory, I swear by the night when it stands silent. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could have swore on so many things. He could have swore on a hurricane, he could have swore on a snowstorm, he could have swore on so many things, but he swore on the two things that are most definite. When you wake up, you see the sun. When you're sleeping, it's nighttime. Two things that you cannot deny. That he says that your Lord has not forsaken you. So the next time people who are in addictions, there's hope. As long as you wake up and you see the sunlight, just know, ma wada'aka rabbuka wa ma qala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. These are the resources I've found in British Columbia, Muslim Community Care Foundation. We are a local nonprofit organization in Surrey, BC, that helps with multiple forms of counseling and addictions counseling with yours truly. We have Nisa helpline. May Allah bless them for all the work that they've done for the community and for the work that they will do for the community. Nisa helpline has been a pillar for dealing with people in crisis and aiding them out of crisis. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward the founder, the workers, the volunteer, and anyone that is participating from this, and give them the best of this life and the next, inshallah. Then we have Creekside Detox, which is another place here in Surrey, and then one of my favorite places, which is Luke 15, a very established recovery facility. And these are just a small amount, but alhamdulillah, if you contact one of these places, they can give you a plethora of other resources, alhamdulillah. So again, you guys, thank you so much. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be blessed with you, and may we reunite in paradise until the end of time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
All right. Thank you, Brother Shakeel, for your presentation. And we have Sister Kinza back with us. I think collectively putting your presentations together, most of the questions that everyone asked has been answered, I believe so. I mean, I'm using my best judgment, but yes, alhamdulillah, it looks like these have been answered. I think maybe a few very short questions, right? And it's mostly about resources. If you guys know, either yourself, Brother Shakeel, or Kinza, right? Even though you guys are not from Montreal or Quebec, if there are any resources there specifically, or any national-wide resources you guys know?
National resources, I think we have one here. It's right on my slide, actually. It's canada.ca, and it's Canada Services Substances. So actually under the Canadian government website, they actually have substance use services that they can direct you to. So that one is nationwide, and that actually helps with locating, because Quebec is a little bit away from us. But they still have resources available that can best suit their needs, inshallah.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much, Brother Shakeel. And I guess maybe the last question, right? Once again, because I believe everything was covered from your presentations, alhamdulillah. If you guys believe you still have any leftover questions, please do feel free to drop them in right now. And we can look to them getting answered, inshallah. The next one is, if you guys know what are methadone clinics, and if that could be, how could we refer clients to those clinics?
Sister, if you want to take that one away.
Yeah. So in Ontario, for the most part, people can call in themselves to get an assessment done with a doctor at any kind of methadone clinic. You can Google and find a methadone clinic near you. Your family doctor can also refer you to a methadone clinic. Some family doctors are comfortable starting people on methadone.
Mhm.
There is also rapid access addiction medicine clinics all throughout Ontario that you can also go to, where you can get support from methadone. Hospitals also have them. I work at William Osler Health System, which is in the Peel region, and we have in-house methadone doctors as well.
Mhm.
So that's for Ontario, from my understanding.
Yeah, for BC is actually the same way too. You can just quickly call a doctor. We actually have opioid clinics specifically designed for people that are suffering from addictions. Now, it's easy to make the phone call, or we can just have caseworkers from multiple different organizations like Muslim Community Care Foundation that will actually help you in that journey, because it gets you, number one, there's a huge wait, and number two, you can get lost very quickly. So having a caseworker to aid you is probably the best step to go outside of what the sister just brought up, because like I said, a lot of jargon, a lot of slang, a lot of just kind of doing it your own, and people get they overwhelmed, and they feel, I guess you can say, they feel like they may not understand what's going on. So having someone there kind of like to support you and to kind of guide you through the entire process, it is a process, but subhanAllah, what a great end goal, right?
Alhamdulillah. All right, so it seems like it is the end of the questions, which believe are not answered through other presentations. And with that, I will thank our speakers, Brother Shakeel and Sister Kinza. Thank you so much for your time, right? And thank you for staying back a little bit behind as well, since we are a little bit over time. It is very appreciated that, with your ending work days, busy days, you guys still stayed back to give us your time, alhamdulillah. With that said, thank you once again for answering questions, for the great presentations. It was an absolute pleasure to have both of you guys with us this evening with Nisa Helpline.
SubhanAllah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for those of you guys who have registered on Zoom, you will receive a self-help guide created by our very own speakers in your inbox, inshallah. And if you did not register, you can access those resource guides once it is available on our website, www.nisahelpline.com/wellness. The website link should be shared in the chat as well. Let me just pop that up over there. There we go. Thank you for our moderator, Kutsia. Now, before we wrap up, please do keep an eye on Nisa Helpline's social media platforms or our website for future events. We will have a few more events with Bedouin Talk in the series of workshop to wrap up the year. Thank you so much once again for joining us this evening. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Take care.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.